Welcome back to another episode of Oh My Lordi. We have a special guest today. We have Matt from Pathfinder. I'm excited to kind of dive into some of the aspects that Matt has going on because we talk a lot about marketing and, this is, maybe some boring stuff, not to Matt, but we're going to actually talk about this because it is super important for your business foundationally. And I think there's so many people out there, so many businesses out there that really just don't know where to turn. So that's why I'm super excited to have you on here, Matt.
Oh My Lordi podcast.
Tell us kind of how the journey started with your company and where you're trying to take it, what you're trying to solve for everyone.
Sure. Well, I've been in the health insurance space now for 5 years, basically because I've been self-employed essentially all my life, but strictly 1099 for the last 20 years. And looking for health insurance for me and my family was always a problem. When you don't have a group sponsoring you, the options thinned out. And then you had the Affordable Care Act and everything that happened and the changes that went on there. And all of a sudden you're paying a lot for, what am I paying for? I'm not really getting anything. So getting into that, our target market was self-employed business owners. And that's how obviously you and I connected, because I've helped you out with you and your family and your health insurance needs and such. But as I went through that process, besides just finding the right fit for self-employed people, small business owners, really, saw there were a lot of other needs that business owners can need help with. And one of the main things that's come up is their business credit, of being able to get their finances in order. And we were talking a little bit offline, but, I started out in the 90s, the Stone Ages, in doing Wall Street work. So I was in New York City, living that life. And, we had everyone from Mark Cuban, Donald Trump was in our offices, doing their deals. And I always would sit there and go, oh, look at these guys, running these businesses and many more that, it was the 90s. It was all the rise of the internet and the .com, everything like that. So it was a pretty exciting time. It's just, you blink and 8 years went by and you're like, oh. And I really felt the urge to kind of do my own thing, especially the landscape change there. And after 9/11 and all that sort of thing, I was like, maybe this isn't the center universe. Let's look for other things. So I want to move to Florida and get involved in real estate and really being on my own, not having a big company behind me. And then that transformed into doing lots of other different financial services, and found my way into secured lending for a while, doing a lot of opportunity capital for up and coming businesses and really kind of digging into their business structures and figuring out what type of return on the capital that they could get, running pro formas, working with the operators. I mean, it was really cool stuff. But wound up then moving into the health insurance field, and the plans that I represent, the company I work for right now is in my opinion, the best product for a self-employed person if they can qualify for it, because we have medical underwriting, and if they can afford it because there's no subsidies involved. It's just the best product, and they need to look at it and then see if it fits for them. And then if it doesn't, I've now have some great referral partners that I know that if I put people over there, they're going to get taken care of. And it's all about finding your way through that murky landscape of health insurance and knowing that you're in the best spot possible. Because sometimes, even though it's not like being with a Fortune 500 company or whatever, it's just a trade-off. You have the freedom of being self-employed. And one of the things is paying for your own health insurance. But I talk to people about how they can make sure they get the most out of what they have. And then, hey, deduct that premium. It's a business expense, that sort of stuff. So
100%. Yeah.
In that process, though, as I talk to all these small business owners or independent contractors, gig workers, all that sort of thing, because that's kind of my target market. Just really a need that if they need to borrow money or finance a project or just manage their own debt. I found myself talking to them about that, and I was like, well, that's my prior life, and that's really something that if I could add that tool to my tool belt to help folks out would be a great way to help my existing customers, and then go on down the line and find new customers. And then those new customers, I can talk about health insurance as well. So that's kind of what led us to talk about this here on the podcast.
Yeah.
And it became, I found a solution that I kind of subscribe to, and we have some unique things, and that's why I wanted to come on and try to launch that and make your clients and podcast viewers aware of, and that it's a great service that they should check out. Yeah.
Again, we super appreciative of you hopping on because it's so important for businesses. I think it's probably a step that most skip or don't even think about. And I know when I moved from Pennsylvania to Tennessee, and I was completely lost because nobody wants to deal with insurance. Nobody wants to deal with, these nitty gritty things. And, here you come saving the day. And process was like the most simple thing ever. You're dealing with, big companies. It's usually a nightmare.
Yeah. Nothing like talking to that 800 number, 45-minute wait time. And
right.
That's one thing I kind of show people is like, I'll take care of it. I've got some back, we at least have web chat apps and things like that where it's still a lot of work, but
right.
I know what they're going to say. I know how to circumvent it, the right questions to ask to try to get the best result. And it doesn't always win, but at least I can go back to them and say, hey, this is what the case is. This is what we need to do. And we can take it or leave it. It is what it is. So.
Yeah. And honestly, I'm obviously impressed with your background and kind of, the whole journey through, where you started and kind of what you're doing now. You probably have a bunch of war stories for another time, but, we were just at an event with like Kevin Harrington, Damon John, you mentioned Mark Cuban, all those guys probably, just doing a lot of different cool things that maybe us smaller guys could only dream of. Right. But, that's why there's tools like these to make our life easier, especially on the funding side, to maybe jumpstart that project that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what really attracted me to this strategy that I'm that I'm headlining is, when you're small, you're individual, you can't really, you go to the bank, you can open up a business banking account, maybe you get a business credit card or something like that. And, there is a big difference of having a business credit versus your personal credit. Unfortunately, as a startup or new person, you have to rely on your personal credit to get business credit. Right. But there are better ways of getting it done. And I can help people do that. And I can also tell them, no, it's not going to work right now, but this is what we need to do to get there.
Right.
So, just like everything, it's a process. And that's kind of, we were talking about sort of rebranding everything under this Pathfinder banner is, guiding people through the murkiness of all this stuff, because there's no shortage of information, right? You can Google search it or ChatGPT or whatever, and it's going to tell you all these different things. But until you're actually in there, in the woods, trying to find your path, you don't have that 100% confidence and you never really do. But, it would be nice to have somebody there sort of guiding you along the way. And that's kind of what I envision myself doing is, I've got a lot of water in the bridge here and experience in a myriad of different things. And, I just want to be able to share that and lend some credence and help people say, okay, I'm going to go in this path for my health insurance. I can go in this path for some funding.
Yeah. And I think everyone can appreciate kind of like been there, done that. They can relate obviously in some ways and just trust, because I think that's the biggest thing with all the different options out there. It's like, who do I trust?
Yeah.
Right. Who can I text, right? Or call and they're there for me, which obviously you are, or, anytime. And that's so important. And I talk to businesses, I'm sure you do as well, all the time, and they're just stuck. And it's like, hey, we need more capital to hire. We need more capital to buy this, to have this new service or whatever it might be. And you're right. They're either pulling from, their personal, which, we won't even go down that road. That's going to cause all kinds of messes, but they're just not able to. And so having these little pieces, again, I just can't, reiterate how important it is.
And then I'm very relationship based, and I take the time. I pick up. People call me on Saturdays for customer service issues, and
don't tell people that. No.
Well, I prefer, but I'll do. If someone needs me, they need me. It's kind of a core value, I guess I have. I think. Look, I'm very interested in making money for myself and for my family and taking care of things, or whatever. Absolutely. But there's one thing as you get to my age where you kind of figure out what makes you tick, and I don't know what it is. I really get a charge out of helping people, and not just helping, but really making that difference, whether it's saving them money on something that they're spending already or just opening up a door to, a path to getting to their goals. And there's a lot of juice in that for me. I mean, I'm not a sales guy, and, doing this health insurance thing, a lot of the most successful people are just sales guys. They're ramming it down your throat. And, to a degree, I'm very persistent, have to be. But, there really is a core feeling of, hey, I want to help you. It's really what I'm doing because I can. No one wants to talk about health insurance until they need it. And, a lot of people call me and it's too late. I can't get them the best product. I'll get them something and help them out. But, people do want to talk about money, especially when they need it. And that's very appealing to me to be able to have something that, everyone can look at. And plus, our plans are only in certain states and things like that. I mean, 33 states, it's not like it, but I can do this nationwide, right? And help people with their funding needs. So,
yeah. Was there one specific kind of scenario where you were like, oh, I gotta start this funding side of things?
Yeah.
Like let's talk about that. Like,
well, the key, because I've looked at it, I mean, I've gone through the journeys with my own personal credit and trying to fix things, and get things set up. And, me and my wife are always looking at better ways of structuring our LLCs and tax strategies. And there's some really interesting things that I'm looking to incorporate on that front later down the line. But the main thing that really made me move on this was lining up with a group where they're able to get 0% business and personal cards in one fell swoop much more effectively. So I'm using their program. I've licensed underneath them and through my Pathfinder funding, and I've used it now to take people. It's not even if they need capital. It's like, hey, if you're paying credit card debt, if you've got 20, 30 more of credit card debt and your FICO scores 650 plus, I can probably save you hundreds, if not thousands, on what you're paying, just by converting that debt into 0% debt, whether, business with a combination of business and personal cards. I can probably set it up where, I can increase your credit score within a month or two using some of the strategies that we have. And you can't do this on your own. You need to have this tool in order to get the maximum results. So, anyone could go out and try to apply for a business credit or even a 0% personal, credit card. It's just, you apply for one, great. You might get 5,000, 10,000, 20,000. You try to apply for another, you might get that one. It'll probably be a little bit lower. But by the third or fourth one, they hit your report right away. Whereas this program, we're able to take 10 to 15 companies, apply all at once. And the results I've gotten are just blowing me away with some of the, I have people that were like, gee, if I can get, $5,000 on a business credit and, 10, another 10 on personal, I'll be happy. And I've 50 to 60, I mean, they have to have the right steps and fit certain things. And a lot of times we have to take a month or two to take some steps to get them into that right position. I follow the first do no harm. I'm not going to hurt anyone's credit. So everything we do is soft pull and pre-approvals, and we get as clear a look as we can. And that's what one of these great tools that with this software I use is everything's kind of pre-approved. I know worst case scenario, what's going to happen. And a lot of times it turns out to be better than the initial estimate. So, I just had somebody, like I was saying, they just wanted 15,000 and we wound up with 60,000 in 0% credit over the next 12 to 18 months. It varies. And then what's nice too, is I can then take all those different cards. You're like, oh, great. Now I got 8 websites I have to go in it to manage. We have a tool where it all goes on to, you're on the one page. And you can manage it all on one page. And then, by the way, it's also like QuickBooks. You can actually connect all your accounts and do your own balance sheets and profit and loss statements and cash flow studies, projections, and various other things. I mean, it's just an incredible tool there where I could just sell that software, and that's a value to people. But I'm basically throwing it in with the with the funding.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, I think I had a conversation the other day where, obviously we do marketing, and they were like, man, this is really good, but I have a $30,000 loan that's killing me right now. Right. And so like if they were able to save even just a couple $100 a month, turning that into, because the rates are ridiculous.
Well, yeah,
crazy.
Yeah, it's 20% to 25%.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
If with 750 credit, I mean, so they don't take it easy on you. But think about it. What's your only alternative is to go to a bank or something like that,
right?
Unless you're doing $50,000 a month, or you're not going to get a business line of credit from a bank. So this is really the best way to get it. And if you can get it where you're not, your minimum payments don't add up to $5,000 a month, you're always going to wind up paying about 2% of what you borrow, but it's all going against the principal. So you're actually paying it down.
Yeah.
With the software that we have to track everything, you can actually forecast going forward what you're going to need. You have much better visibility than you had before. And that's what I'm offering to guide people through all that.
I mean, I love it because, there was this very specific scenario last year. Even the company came to us and they were like, hey, we obviously want to grow. Right. But more importantly, they want it to be steady. Right. And not everyone has the same type of business. They have different goals for it. But, we got their revenue stream consistent all year long. Right. So like in the winter months and even some other months, like they would just plummet. And so we were able to get them super consistent. Come to find out, and I didn't even know this because they didn't share this at the time, they took out a big loan and had like a $5,000, debt every month. And so, at the end of the year, we're talking numbers. Yeah, everything has been great. Revenue steady, but we can't really do anything else because
we're stuck. We have this liability
we're stuck.
To take care of. Right?
So I just, partnering up with someone like you, again, kind of, you put on the cape, save the day, because that would be huge for them.
Look, I love wearing the cape and I love doing something like that. But, that's the whole thing, Pathfinder, right? It's really putting on the headlamp and looking through, because you're sitting there looking at that problem and go, okay, I've got to really massively up level my knowledge to get there. The whole thing with mentors, right? I mean, you can do that quicker if you have just someone who you can talk to for 10 minutes at a time and say, oh, what do I do here? What do I do here? And, I'll spend an hour with somebody or whatever. If they want to talk, I'm in, let's figure it out.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, there's certain things you can't, I can't put on the cape because I can't always help, and that's with health insurance or the funding. Look,
but you can always guide.
But I can guide you, and I can say, look, if we can do this, if you want to talk, I get on the phone with people and do these, conference calls where I'm like, literally they have to, I can't represent them directly, but I'll be right there and you sort of the conciliary counsel.
Yeah.
And say, say this, say that. Look, you can work the system. There's things you can do that, it's hard to really do it on your own unless someone's saying, yeah, you can do that. Go ahead and do that.
Yeah.
Or don't do that. More importantly, we'll do that.
And there's so many younger business owners now. I'm sure a lot of older business owners, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe like they probably are more familiar on this side of things. Yeah. Maybe not.
Yeah, but you know what? They can't apply for 15 0% credit cards in one fell swoop. I couldn't. So I think that's talking about old, when I saw that, I was like, oh yeah, what am I going to do? Have 11 laptops open? And, so, this is using the technology, right? This is a fintech, fintech solution, and we're going out there. It's a lot of the same things you see on Credit Karma and the various other worlds, but it's just a better mousetrap, right? It's a better way to get to the product that you need. And I'm not the product, I'm using the system and trying to help people use the system. Now, I know there's people that I'm working with now who are younger than me and they're killing it here, whether it's here, my health insurance, a bunch of my fellow agents that I've worked with, and, they have to buy leads and software systems and various other things that they're maintaining. And they've run up credit card debt and they're making their commissions. You get your renewals come in every month, but it's always never enough, right? So you're just essentially, until you get to a certain level, you're maintaining, keeping the lines at bay, so to speak. Whereas I'm able to kind of go in and restructure all that debt that they have, save them a lot of money, and it lets them pay off their debt quicker. Especially when we get quarterly bonuses and things like that. And I can go and say, okay, when that payment comes in, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And then it helps that I'm right here and I can sit there and, advise them. Like I'm sort of the uncle figure that's stepping in. But I'm amazed just how much people don't know, and I kind of took it for granted just because life has kicked me around a bunch, and, I've learned the hard way on a lot of different things.
For
but,
sure.
Some of these guys in their 20s and 30s, I'm like, oh, you don't know this because this hasn't happened to you yet.
Yeah.
Let me make sure it doesn't happen to you.
So does it make sense for people, like, seriously, like, to look at it and go, I should prepare for this now before I don't need it?
Yeah. It's just like with health insurance, no one wants to talk about it until they need it. Right. Well, the best time, any insurance, I think I've said it to you, insurance when I was doing I did CFP, Certified Financial Planner coursework back in 2000, New York University, before moving to Florida, and I never got my CFP certification, but I did all the coursework, and literally the insurance coursework was, the first tenet is transfer of risk. And that's what insurance is. And no one likes paying an insurance premium, whether it's health, life, auto. It's just, boy, when you need it, you're glad you have it. Right. Sure. Yeah. But you can't get it. You can't get homeowners insurance here in Florida when there's a hurricane offshore and you're worried about it. You got to do it when the seas are calm. And the same kind of comes with funding. It's not, you're better off taking a look at your business finances and getting yourself on the path towards, being funding ready. And I would say 80% of the people I'm talking to, they're not ready for that credit card. Right. There's little things we have to do. Now, what I like is it doesn't take 6 months to get there. You don't have to go through a year of credit repair or things like that. Most of the people I'm talking to, within 30 days, I can get them, kind of set up. And a lot of times it's getting some other type of financing ahead of time, or, don't incur that cost of getting a personal loan. Let's look at what you have now, and let's transfer balances and do other sorts of things. Even if it costs a little bit more in the short term, it's a bridge. We're trying to get to where we can then take advantage of the program. So, right. Yeah. It's really hard to do on your own. You got to, if you're in sales or if you're running your business, you got a lot of other distractions. Mm-hmm. I'll take the time. I take their stuff. I put it in a sheet. I work it all out because I've done it for myself a million times before. I'm just basically cloning the things that I do, for myself. And here you go. And they're like, holy cow, how'd you do this? I'm like, I don't even think about it. It's what I'm built to do.
That's why it's so important to leverage people. That sounds like a dirty term, leverage people, but like leverage people, that just know more than you and that can do things that you're not good at. Yeah. And I think a lot of young businesses, especially, they're just like, no, I'm going to wear all the hats. I'm going to do it all. And maybe they think, leveraging people, like I said, is like a bad thing. Yeah. But it's really important, I think, especially when it comes to finances, especially because you're talking about the health of your company.
Right. Right. And then, the health of your financial future, really. I mean, the one person I'm working with right now doesn't have a retirement account set up, doesn't have, making a ton of money. And I'm like, what? Then I'm thinking, well, yeah, I grew up, had the Wall Street background, I digested this stuff, for 30 plus years. Yeah, it's crazy to me, but when I put myself in their shoes, it's like, yeah, they were never exposed to it. But why would they? Right. So, right. And it's just so easy for me to be able to say that, look, here, let's do this. It's not complicated. It's just, you're not going to find it on your own unless you really have someone helping you along the way. So I get immense personal satisfaction from being able to help somebody like that. And that's why I'm here. I'm not exactly a podcast friendly face or anything like that, but I wanted to kind of get out and say, hey, this is my mission. I got to help people. I've been doing the health insurance thing for a while, but here's another, tool in my tool belt. Let me get to work, because it's really important. And it doesn't have to be a super complicated process. At the end of the day, like if someone came to you and wanted to take advantage of your marketing services, I've referred you some of my clients, and when I check with them, they're like, well, we can do this. We'd really like to do this top tier service that you're offering, but it costs this, and we got to figure this out. I go back to it. Now I can go back to them and say, hey, if you want to take a look at that, I can do this for you. And then, here's $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 of business credit that, doesn't report to your, personal, credit.
Right.
You can use, you can max it out. It's not going to hurt your utilization. It's not going to hurt your credit score. Oh, by the way, though, here's, let's work on a plan to pay this off responsibly and everything like that too. A lot of people just like, here's your credit. See you later. Right. I'm envisioning helping people throughout the process. So it doesn't have to be, let's just do a full financial download, examination. It could be like, hey, I got this. I know I can make a ton of money if I could just have the $30,000 to get it going.
Right.
Let's take a look. Let's make something happen. And even if you wind up not getting the 0% and you're paying, a term loan at 15 to 20, 25%, if your return on that loan's 300%, who cares?
Yeah. That's a valid point.
No, in my secured lending background, we used to go in and we were charging 15 to 20%, secured loans where we had collateral. We had things that secured the loan. But at the end of the day, they needed that money to turn it into something huge.
Yep.
Who cares what you pay? Don't get consumer focused on it. Focus on your business and what your business can do by putting this, kerosene on it with funding. And if I can get it to you for 0% and you're just basically, you're able to manage that over 12 to 18 months, it's essentially, it's a no fee payment plan.
Right.
So a lot of people go to a firm and Klarna, and obviously those are big players in the industry. But, if I can work some of my programs, I think I can do better than those. And, or if those are the right fits, me, hey, do that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the bonus though, like you're there to guide and help and kind of go beyond just like the surface level stuff though.
Yeah.
And that's so important.
Right. Because at the end of the day, I'm still independent, right? I'm not with my health insurance. I'm essentially what's called a captive agent. I can only sell and make money really from my company on my plans. I think I spend at least 50% of my time outside of that box advising people just for the karma, these are people who need help. Hey, I can show you how to bank. Yeah, and look, it comes back to me in referrals and goodwill and various other things. So I'm not worried about it. I think it drives me a little crazy sometimes because I'm like, I'm spending a lot of time doing these other things, but I don't know. I don't think I could live with myself without being able to tell people that what the real deal is. Look, so much of what I went through in my life, where being on Wall Street, being in real estate, health insurance, even with dealing with credit card companies and things like that. There's so much bait and switch. There's so many, there's a lot of the things headline that you've read or there's perceptions out there. It's not all true, but there's a lot of truth in it. Yeah. And my BS meter is pretty in tune, and it doesn't make me a great employee. That's why I think I had to be self-employed. But I am fiercely independent, but I do enjoy helping people. And if it's not my company or my program, it's evaluating what else, what their other options are, and kind of setting them on that pace. So it might not be the best monetary reward to me, but the karmic reward is significant, and no bones about it. I mean, I am in this to grow my business and to do right by me and my family, but it's only if it's mutually beneficial. That's the only way I can do it. So,
well, I mean, one of the quotes that our company lives by too is from Zig Ziglar. If you give enough people in life what they want, you can have everything in life that you want. So, right. And I've known that quote for a long time, and that's one that's always kind of puzzled me because what do they want? Yeah. Well, I guess you got to figure that out first.
Yeah. Provide value and, they will pay you back in spades. And I think I've always, what's the value? I'm much more concrete like that. I was like, okay, those are nice words. But like I said, my BS meter goes off and I'm like, okay, well, what does this really mean? But I do ascribe to all those tenets. I think where people can benefit is I'm really striving to make very practical how to get there, because I've been on that path myself for a long time, the path of self-improvement. And I don't know if I'm ever going to get there, but, a lot of it is being on the path is what matters. And getting to the end result. It's just I'm hyper focused on the concrete steps that you need to take to get there. And that's why I'm excited about, the health insurance that I represent, because I know that is the best deal for someone if they can qualify for it. And I know that this program that I've discovered is really going to help people out. And that's why I'm willing to stumble and fumble on podcasts and try to get the word out.
Yeah, well, I mean, hopefully we can reach a bunch of people. I think what we did here was shut down any objection of people coming to our company saying, I can't afford it, right? So I think we accomplished that.
Yeah. I think that's where this all started. It's like, hey, Tyler.
Yeah, right. But more so, having you here as, like you said, that Pathfinder, that guide, someone people can relate to, that's, again, been there, done that, has the history. It's so important. So, I mean, I think one of my last questions would be like, is there a point in time in someone's business where it's like, hey, I should start to think about these things? Is it right away? Is it when they hit, some sort of roadblock? Should they at least just have a conversation?
Look, there's never a bad time to have the conversation, right? Yeah. Because having that conversation, then as you go about your journey, this may be what we talked about, and this is maybe something I need to avoid or check into, because there's certain things you do and you don't realize that, they're hitting your credit, or they're getting in the way of maybe getting to where you're more creditworthy. A lot of that is not insurmountable. It can be dealt with. So yeah, when you hit the roadblock, call me. Yeah. Let's deal with the obstacle. But look, I think anyone, if they're even thinking about starting, I can get them kind of set on the right path, even if we don't do anything right away. Like I said, it's so important to make those steps before the storm happens, right? Whether it's health insurance, whether it's funding, I'm happy to help people with, structural advice, how to set up their companies and that sort of thing. Because if it's not me, I know enough people that I can put them in touch with. And that's kind of the whole Pathfinder brand that I'm trying to envision. Is it doesn't have to be me. It's like I've got a Rolodex contact list of people.
Nobody knows what that is anymore.
Yeah, exactly. I'm from the 90s, so I can dial out Rolodexes. And crazy when you think of everything that's going on now. I didn't know I was going to become so ancient, but I'm in touch. I can connect people with the resources that they need. So right now it's health insurance and the funding, but anything from there's things I've learned just in the last 5 years that I was like, oh man, I wish I knew this in my 20s, because it existed. It just wasn't out there. It's what it's what really keyed in family offices and wealth managers knew about. And, if I knew it back then, I think I could have built so much more as far as, business. But I'd like to share that with folks and kind of, any sort of questions. And like I said, if it's not me, I'm the first one to say, hey, I'm not qualified to help you here, but I know 2 or 3 other people that, we can talk to, and I'll go with you and kind of sit by your side virtually and we'll figure this stuff out. So, and that's huge. Small business, being self-employed, I can tell you from being a bad employee, I was a great employee. I didn't think like an employee, right? And I think a lot of the people that you're talking to, they want to be their own bosses. It's challenging out there. Yeah. So, to be able to have somebody to sort of, bounce things off of is a big deal. And, everyone's getting into virtual communities and sharing ideas and things like that. But, in my opinion, nothing beats a one-on-one conversation.
And there's so much noise out there.
There's so much noise. That's the whole thing. How do you find the path through the noise? There's so much information. It used to be you couldn't find the information. Now you can find so much. It's like, I do it myself. It's like, what do I pay attention to? As you're sitting on your computer working away and you get notifications, it's all about attention, right? So you're in marketing, you're trying to, how do I maximize people, getting attention for their businesses?
So dang it, we're the problem.
Or the solution.
Or the solution. Depends on how you look at it.
Let me help you out here, Tyler.
Well, Matt, man, I really appreciate you coming on. I think, truthfully, again, the information here is so valuable. It sounds like whether you're an old business or young business, just have the conversation, see what's possible. And so that way you can set yourself up.
Yeah, look, and it really is no cost. I have a website set up. It's Pathfinder2Funding.com. It's the number 2, Pathfinder2Funding.com. And you click the Get Started button, fill out a 3-minute form, and that gives me everything I need to talk intelligently with you and kind of, lay out your options. So, anyone who's looking at hiring you for your marketing services and they need some help, or just, people who are using your marketing services and need some help with what they have going on, like you were talking about, I'd love to be able to see what I can do to help them. And then, like I said, first, not going to do anything that's going to be, detrimental to your credit or, insurance situation or anything. It's everything's pre-approved before we make a move. Right. So, there's no reason not to.
Right. I love that. Well, we'll put the link in the description of the video, and I hope this was helpful for everybody. If you have questions, reach out to Matt through his site. And thanks again for coming on.
Thank you, Tyler. Really appreciate it, man.
All right. We'll see you guys next time.